By the time I'm recording this video, summer break has just begun for a lot of folks here in America. And as a wrestling fan, for me, one of the biggest indicators that, the summer season is here, it's time to let loose, it's time to relax, the weather's getting nice, and the action's getting hot, it's the Great American Bash. And that's what we're going to review this time here on the Classic Pay-Per-View Review. My first WCW Classic review, all of 2026. We are looking at the Great American Bash from 1998. Technically, it's WCW and NWO's Great American Bash, and we'll get more about that in a little bit. From June 14th at the Baltimore Arena in Baltimore, Maryland. This show takes place right around the time that I was watching wrestling, by the time I was getting really sucked into the fandom. However, this is still kind of a blind spot for me because at this point I was really dialed into what the WWF was doing, flipping back to see what WCW was on about, but a lot of the details, especially at this point watching the Nitros back, it's really fuzzy to me, but it is a fun time to relive because, hey, what's the hottest thing in wrestling at this point in the spring of '98? It's the NWO Wolfpac, the Red and Black Attack. Wolfpac is back, causing mass destruction. Guess who's here? The bad boys of wrestling. Oh my God, this was like the coolest thing at the time. WCW really got into some good luck here when they decided to cannibalize their own act in the NWO in lieu of making new baby faces in WCW because they spent so long making the entire organization look like a joke. They had to, eventually form some kind of friction in between the NWO. So now Kevin Nash and Randy Savage have split off to create the Wolfpac. And then over time, you had Lex Luger joining, you had Konnan joining, Kurt Hennig and Rick Rude are there for some reason. Then the recruiting really picks up when they get Sting, hence the Red and Black Sting for a while. I'm not exactly sure what the end goal of the Wolfpac was, but it doesn't seem to matter at this point because, like I said, this is like coolness personified. It's all these white guys in their late 30s, early 40s in a midlife crisis trying to act like teens again. Kevin Nash wearing his FUBU and Lex Luger wearing tight black jeans. So at this point, you've got the split between, Hollywood and the Wolfpac, and a big recruitment war has begun. And it affects a lot of the matches we'll get into on this night. But yeah, as far as what the point of the Wolfpac is, it doesn't seem to me it has the same goal as the NWO like Black and White did, because that was a whole outside rebel organization. It was privately funded by someone on the inside, but the whole thing was it was this outside organization coming to take over in the company, and it was this war between WCW and the NWO. And then after Starrcade, it just kind of became this thing where it's like, well, the NWO's still here and still lingering, and now it's a part of the branding, it's part of the establishment. We have named it the WCW NWO World Championship and Tag Titles. So it's like, what exactly are they rebelling against at this point? It just seems to me the Wolfpac is just there to have a good time, and everyone else in the NWO Black and White is just there to make Hollywood Hogan happy. But either way, this show is sold out. 12,800 plus in the Baltimore Arena. The show got 290,000 pay-per-view buys. It's the highest number the Great American Bash ever received. It's a really cool set, by the way, too. It's really unfortunate they did not recreate this for WCW NWO Revenge. The opening hype package jumps back and forth from footage of the flag and fireworks and staticky Sousa music to scary flashing footage of lots of angry people. Then at the end you hear the record skipping, and every time it skips you get this quick flash of the four biggest names on the card: Piper, Bret, Savage, Hogan. When I think about it, this whole hype package kind of predicts the whole vibe for BioShock Infinite. Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, and Bobby the Brain Heenan are on the call here. They open up talking about the situation with Randy Savage and Roddy Piper, which we'll get to later in the show. Then they toss over to Mean Gene Okerlund on the stage. He tries to explain just how fucked up this tag title situation is with Sting and the Giant, and then he wraps it up by saying, "What an historic evening. I'm glad to be part of it." Well, we're glad you're here too, Gene. We then begin begin with what is technically the 8th match in this best of 7 series as Booker T takes on Chris Benoit to see who will face Fit Finlay for the World TV title later this same evening. Now, a little while back, Benoit cost Booker T the title against Finlay, reigniting this old rivalry they had, and so it turns into this best of 7 series, which goes across several weeks of Nitro and Thunder. This is a real star-building performance for Booker T as somebody who's still relatively fresh in the singles scene. This goes such a long way in building his singles cred while Stevie Ray is out with an injury. And so it's a great series. Starts out, Booker T is down 3-1, and suddenly he mounts this huge comeback. He ties it up. They have a match 7 on the Thunder before the pay-per-view to see who will fight Finlay. In the end, as part of Bret Hart's recruitment drive for NWO Hollywood, he's trying to get Benoit to join the group. He tries to cost Booker T the match by hitting him with a chair with the referee's back is turned. But Benoit, ever the sportsman, noble man he is, says no, he didn't want to win the match like that. He basically told on himself to the referee, said, hey, this guy got hit with a chair, and so the referee threw it out, awarded the match to Booker T. Then later in the night, Booker T comes out and says he doesn't want to win the match like that. And so he and Benoit have agreed, we're just going to throw the result of that match out and do it one more time. Nice, slow feeling out process to start things off. Really good backy-forthy. I love how early in the show, how just into everything the crowd is. They follow this match so closely, like right on down to an early sequence where they're trading chops back and forth. Benoit hits Booker off the ropes and hits him with a chop, takes him down. Crowd pops big for that one. These guys are both really crisp in the ring. It feels different from all the other matches they've had leading up to this. Benoit working over Booker for a while, just stretching him out with a cool surfboard move. Benoit blocks one kick, but not the other. I loved that. Booker starts to come back. He hits the spinneroonie before it's called that, but Benoit fights back, hits a big superplex. Booker takes 2 Germans. He blocks a third, then takes a freaking full Nelson suplex. Damn. Diving headbutt by Benoit takes them both out. Booker with a side kick to the back of the head, 1 to the front, the missile dropkick to Benoit, cover, and the win for Booker T, and that is the best looking graphic they've had for this entire series. I give it 4 stars out of 5. It's a great opener, and if you at all followed the series leading up to this, every single one of their matches was great. And, the commentary went out of their way to put over the effort that these two had. I mean, this series really elevated the two of them. And we can talk all we want about Benoit now and everything, but I mean, back then, this was a prime example of just the way, these guys were being invested in. And it's so funny. It was so successful, and they both look back on it so fondly. They pitched to redo the whole thing years later in WWE over the US title. We go to the internet location zone where crazy Chavo Jr. is chatting with Lee Marshall, and they're arguing over whether or not Eddie really wants to fight him at this point. And then we move on to a singles match between Saturn and Kanyon. So in the last couple of months, Kanyon shed the Mortis gimmick. Early in the year, he, as Mortis, tried to get in Raven's flock. He was rejected, and since then has been on this mission to take down Raven and whatnot. And he's really fancied himself as kind of a master of disguise, trying to, sneak in and attack Raven where he can. And to the point where Raven hired a riot squad, courtesy of WCW, to protect him. But there was Kanyon in disguise the whole time. So now Raven is telling Saturn to fight his battles for him. Saturn at this point is in a very tenuous relationship with the flock. He was originally kicked out, and he lost a loser leaves the flock match to Van Hammer not too long ago, but then Raven said, never mind, you kick Van Hammer out instead. Kanyon shows up in his Mortis gear on the ramp, or does he? The real Kanyon's actually in the ring and jumps Saturn to start things off. Kanyon's kicking all sorts of ass. Kidman then shows up and he gets decked. Then we get Lodi of the flock. Then out comes Horace and Riggs, who yoink him out of the ring and beat him up. Then Saturn dives onto all of them. Referee Nick Patrick then ejects the flock members. Saturn crotches Kanyon on the ropes and does a crazy springboard clothesline over the ropes and to the outside. That was nuts. Saturn with shades of Sabu. He's using a folding chair to set up a nice looking drop kick to Kanyon. Then he pulls off the Arabian moonsault right after that. Okay, at this point he's just blatantly stealing Sabu's shit. We get some real unique pinning attempts by Saturn. Kanyon with a TKO, a torture rack into a suplex as well. My goodness. Both men fight up top, both get crotched, and both men go tumbling to the floor. Suddenly, fake Mortis shows up, throws Saturn into the ring. Then we get another Mortis. Oh shit, it's a Mortis off, brother. What the hell is happening? Tony right away has this theory that, oh, maybe the flock got their own Mortis, which, even though he's technically correct, how was that his first guess? Saturn with the flying nothing, but Kanyon hits the flatliner for the win. Then one of the Mortises walks up to Kanyon, hits him with the even flow DDT on the floor. He unmasks and it's Raven. Raven's berating Saturn, saying, I gave you one job and you can't even do that. What about me? What about Raven? And then Saturn can't take any more of this abuse. He throttles Raven. The flock members go to attack him, but Saturn then fights them off. I give it 4 stars out of 5 as well. This is a really fun matchup, like with no expectations going into it. These guys just threw everything at each other, and it led to a very entertaining matchup. My big question is, as far as like the extra Mortises go, like who's the dude who was helping Kanyon out? Because we know that one of them was Raven. Like how did Raven know to also have a Mortis outfit on hand in case Kanyon brought another one out? Last week on Thunder, Dean Malenko willingly surrendered the Cruiserweight Championship because he was sick of hearing Chris Jericho's bitching. So for a second, let's go back to the events leading up to Slamboree. So Chris Jericho, Cruiserweight Champion, having a bit of fun at Dean Malenko, whose father, Boris, recently passed away. So Jericho spends weeks and months making fun of Dean for having a dead dad. He beats him in a couple of title matches to the point where Dean supposedly quits wrestling. Then we move on to Slamboree, where there's going to be a battle royal to see who will fight Jericho for the Cruiserweight title right afterward. And then a masked wrestler by the name of Cyclope wins the match. And so then, just before he fights Jericho for the belt, he unmasks. It's Dean Malenko. He beats Jericho, wins the Cruiserweight Championship. Big pop, big vindication for Malenko here, but not so fast, because then begins what is honestly, at this time, it is a career-defining run for Chris Jericho at this point. The conspiracy victim. He believes that WCW is behind this massive conspiracy to prevent him from being the Cruiserweight champion. So much so, he tries to get a letter written from Ted Turner. He goes to Washington, D.C. to take it up. He goes to the House of Representatives and the White House itself, and he's holding up the sign. He goes to the Library of Congress to try and find some legal loophole, to award the belt back to him. This is amazing work, and it's really the funniest thing that WCW is doing at this point. It is so good, and it's so memorable, and it's this angle that made me a Jericho fan way back then. It's an amazing bit of business that no one else was doing anything like this. So now we go to this Thunder where Malenko has given up the belt, but then J.J. Dillon makes a matchup between the two of them at the Great American Bash for the belt. Jericho, of course, is freaking out over this. He's whining and complaining. He doesn't want to fight. But then suddenly in comes his dad, former NHL player Ted Irvine, who just walks up to him and goes, "Hey man, you're acting like a total asshole right now. You need to man up. You got to fight Dean Malenko. Otherwise, you'll never be a real champion. I'm very disappointed in you, young son of mine." Which is a fucking amazing moment to have. Just of all the times to bring out a shoot parent, for a segment like that, it's great. The bell rings, Jericho doing a little Taz pose for some reason. Is there some news in ECW right now that's got all these little references sprinkled into the show I'm not aware of? The Iceman coming in hot, very aggressive toward Jericho. Jericho's selling here when he's the whiny heel, and the way he squeaks and shrieks when he's being stretched is so funny. It's obviously unlike anything he does today, but if Jericho were a heel and started sounding like that to sell today, that could get over. Jericho takes over with a dive to the outside. After avoiding a Tree of Woe attack, Malenko dodges a Lionsault and goes on a nice run. They fight on the top. Jericho hits the Frankensteiner. There's a great sequence where Jericho counters a pinfall attempt into a Boston Crab. I thought it was the Walls of Jericho for a quick second. Nice fight by Dean, though, to get to the ropes. Dean gets a cloverleaf on Jericho. We get another rope break. Then Jericho gets in Dean's face in the corner, starts saying, "You're just like your dead father," and he slaps him in the face. Oh, shouldn't have done that, because now Dino has gone Don Encino. He has snapped. He starts fighting Chris on the outside. He's going nuts, grabs a steel chair. The match has been thrown out as the one-sided brawl continues. Jericho tries to run away to the back. He escapes into the women's restroom for a second. The fight spills outside of the Baltimore arena. Thrown into a mailbox, as Tony says. Jericho crossing against a light, and he keeps running away. There's a great part. You can see he's trying to run into the building across the way, but I imagine it's closed on a Sunday evening, so he just keeps running. Oh man, that was amazing. I'm going to give it 3.5 stars out of 5. It's disappointing to see the match end inconclusively, but it does, lead into more of their story and their angle further on. And they do announce that Jericho is the winner by disqualification. And for the whole rest of the night, it's like a whole, they will talk about it and go, well, gosh, does that mean that he is the champion? Like, we don't know. And we're not going to know until the following night on Nitro. A lot of what they do on this show is essentially them kind of throwing their hands up and saying, tune in on Nitro and find out, maybe. In the WCW Wrestling.com zone, Eddie pleads for forgiveness from his nephew Chavo, says the family doesn't want them to fight. He loves Chavo, he doesn't want to fight him, and he wants to put the past in the past, so he says. Then we get a hype package, I guess you want to call it that, for Juventud Guerrera. I love it because it's like, here's more about the never say die attitude of Juventud Guerrera. And then we just get this video, it's more like a glamour shot of Juventud, like, wow, look at him standing by that gate. Ooh, look at him, see him sitting on them steps. Ooh, he's teleporting on the steps. That's real never say die, real courageous. But that leads us into our next match. It's David versus Goliath as Juventud Guerrera takes on Reese. Fee, fi, fo, fum. He came here to eat some pizza. One thing that I did think was cool about all the factions in WCW is that they rarely, if ever, had like a singular goal or a singular guy they were after. It's usually like they split off into different things. Like, this is kind of nice, give something for the undercard flock guys to do. And, you've got Juvi just kind of fighting random flock members, building up to fighting the big guy Reese. So yeah, I think it works. I love that Juvi says a quiet little prayer in the corner before he begins. He tries to stick and move, throw any punch he can, but Reese just keeps throwing him off. I love the sign here by Lodi. Reese is tall, Juvi is small. Juvi tries to go for a springboard dive, but Reese catches him in midair, just toys with him before throwing him back in the ring. Juvi lands on his feet. All right then. We get the bully spot with Reese sticking the arm out. The crowd actually laughs at that. Juvi goes for the knee, climbs onto his back. It doesn't last for too long. Reese is just too powerful. Juvi takes Reese to Dick Kick City twice in front of the referee, who just lets it all go. He comes off the ropes and walks right into a huge punch from Reese. Juvi is almost knocked out. They're really putting over the heart and the tenacity of the juice. Now Reese has a chair for some reason. He goes to swing, but the referee takes it from him. Rough looking Hurricane Rana, obvious shoulder up, but the referee keeps counting and Juvi wins. I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. There wasn't really much to this matchup. Reese, not really known for being one of the better big man workers in the world, and so it's definitely a big styles clash here to have such a small cruiserweight going against this mountain of a man, and sometimes it leads to interesting spots and whatnot, but it was just kind of a rough match. Up next, a grudge match between uncle and nephew. It's Eddie Guerrero versus Chavo Guerrero Jr. Well, for the last several months, Eddie has been trying to teach his nephew Chavito some tough love, as it were, putting him in these unwinnable situations and whatnot, making him fight Eddie's battles. So Chavo's finally snapped and is now gone muy loco, but he's not promoted to lieutenant yet. But he is just, pursuing Eddie now, and now Eddie is all afraid of Chavo. I don't know why, because like we have seen in the weeks leading up to this, Chavo gets beat fairly easily. So it's like suddenly now, because he's mad, Eddie's like in fear of his life at this point. Match begins. Chavo slaps Eddie in the face and they trade taunts. I slap my chest. No, I slap my chest. Eddie's launched into the ring post. Big scrape on Eddie's shoulder from that. Chavo's all over his uncle for a while, but then Eddie takes over. My favorite part of this matchup, though, is when Bobby Heenan just starts making noises for every one of the Guerrero brothers Mike Tenay is listing off.
You talked about Grandma Guerrero, of course, Chavo Sr., Mondo and Hector, the brothers. And I think it's important.
We get some very nice nice lucha sequences between the two. Chavo doing a 450 and landing on his feet, following up with a moonsault. Jesus, who knew he had this much in him? I wish he was doing half of this stuff to Hornswoggle in 09. Eddie with that lovely brainbuster. He slaps Chavo while he's down, but nope, Chavo's snapped again and gets to throttling. Chavo chasing Eddie around the ring. Eddie using the referee to cause a distraction, then goes after Chavo's leg. Eddie pulls off that gory special for a bit. Fun fact, one time many years ago in wrestling training, I pulled that move off with a smaller wrestler and I thought I was the coolest cat in the world. I almost forgot this is when Ric Flair and WCW were going through their legal woes for a while because there's a big "We want Flair" chant in the middle of this match. Chavo goes up top, Eddie shakes him off. Ooh, that landing looks really painful. Eddie goes for a frog splash, he misses that. Eddie launches Chavo out of the ring, but he lands on his feet, comes back with a springboard tornado DDT, the pin and the win, an upset victory for Chavo. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I think this is really good. These guys got to show off like why their chemistry is so amazing. They got to do things with each other you often don't see them do with other opponents. And so I am kind of surprised that we're getting what seems to be a lot of like babyface upset victories on this show. It's almost like they're setting you up for, bolstering you up for eventual disappointment later in the evening. After a recap of last Monday's dust-up between Roddy Piper and Randy Savage, we go to the World TV title match, Fit Finlay defending against Booker T, who did wrestle Benoit earlier. It's a hard-hitting match from the get-go. Booker looks really good, really strong at the start. Finlay works the leg extensively, really attacking in all kinds of ways, just for several uninterrupted minutes. He even busts out the stretch muffler. You can tell they're starting to lose the crowd because, one, they're way quieter for this than they have for anything so far in the show, and meanwhile they're getting distracted by easy stuff. Like there's someone in the crowd getting ejected and they're singing the "Nah Nah Hey Hey Goodbye" song. There's even a boring chant. This heat is going on for so long, but just as you start to hear the chant, that's when Booker finally starts mounting a comeback. Bam, bam, bam. Then Finlay just cuts him off. They try a tombstone counter, but Booker can't keep Finlay up. They go for it again. Booker oh so gently spikes Finlay on the way down as they try to recover from the botch. More struggling, Finlay runs himself into the ring post. Booker gives him a pile driver on his knees. Booker with the cover and the win. Now Booker T has regained the TV title after fighting 8, technically 9 grueling matches. I give it 3 stars out of 5. It's not as technically wondrous as, Booker and Benoit earlier in the night, but it tells such a good story. I do think Booker sells almost a bit too long in this matchup. Maybe Finlay needed a bit more stuff to happen to him for Booker to capitalize, but either way, I think it's just a great story overall, a one-night arc for Booker T going through that match with Benoit, and the way he sold such good selling in this matchup, en route to him winning against Finlay. Very well done. Up next for the U.S. Championship, Goldberg goes for win number 100 when he takes on Wolfpac member Konnan. So originally, Goldberg is meant to take on Curt Hennig of the Wolfpac, which again, as that phrase leaves my lips, I refuse to believe it. Even though he technically was a member along with Rick Rude, it just I refuse. I refuse to acknowledge this as official canon. So anyway, Hennig says, I was training with Brad Rangans and I hurt my knee. How awesome is that to hear a Brad Rangans from Appleton, Minnesota reference in 1998 WCW. So anyway, he seems to have hurt his knee and so he can't wrestle, but his friend and Wolfpac mate Konnan is going to step in and fight Goldberg. He's leading this lamb to slaughter. Meanwhile, Goldberg Mania is super strong and ever rising. They have really, found gold, no pun intended, with Bill Goldberg and this big unbeaten streak he's on and the short, intense matches he has had. Like, the commentators cannot stop gushing over how awe-inspiring this is and how the fans just go nuts for him all the time. Just this last week on Nitro, they had one of the most entertaining squash matches in WCW history where La Parka dinks Goldberg with the chair. Goldberg no-sells it, spears La Parka. In doing so, he tears La Parka's ACL on impact. But that was a very entertaining moment before the knee injury. Big shout out to Tony Gordzilla, who's next apparently. What is Goldberg trying to do with Konnan's leg here at the early going? We get an awful looking spear, a jackhammer with no stall, easy win for Goldbergo as Hennig and Rude look on. Then after Goldberg leaves, the Minnesota boys beat up K-Dog. Hennig pulls off the shirt to reveal he's actually part of NWO Hollywood. Oh, it was a damn setup. Then out come the real Wolfpac to make the save. 0 stars out of 5. You know, like I said, I wasn't watching WCW that closely during this time period, so I had no memory of Hennig and Rude being in the group, and I did wonder how they leave in this timeline. Because yeah, you can just see it in hindsight. It's so obvious because they just never belonged in the Wolfpac. I think like there were rumors and stories out that they're going to be turning like weeks before the Great American Bash. It seemed like everyone just knew that this was not going to last and it was going to be a setup. So sure enough it is, and Hennig and Rude go over to the Wolfpac, and of course Rick Rude does not last much longer in the organization. Then there's this great exchange on commentary. I couldn't stop laughing where Bobby Heenan goes, "Damn, I love this." And Tony goes, "Well, you should. Everyone does." Coming up next, a tag team match forged in the bowels of hell as Roddy Piper and Randy Savage are uneasy allies against the cursed duo of Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Bret the Hitman Hart. So, how did we get here? Now, you know, back in late 97, Bret Hart was kind of a big deal, came to WCW amongst all this fanfare, and did everything he could to keep that no good, nasty Hollywood Hogan from leaving Starrcade with the championship. Well, it's funny how much things change like 5 months later, because in April, Bret Hart helps Hollywood Hogan regain the title from another NWO member in Randy Savage. And that is ultimately what sparks Savage to leave NWO, and he and Kevin Nash go on to form the Wolfpac. But then as far as Bret Hart goes, he never officially joins the NWO. He spends months after this as like a satellite member of the New World Order. He never rocks the actual like logo, never rocks the colors. He does wear like a Hollywood Hogan t-shirt a lot of the time, but he's never an official member until, of course, the year 2000, you know, with Jeff Jarrett and the rest. Though I have to imagine this storyline is, to an extent, eating Bret Hart alive, given their history and, you know, the bad blood between them, you know, around WrestleMania 9 time. I guess that is what makes this angle more interesting and intriguing to those who, like, know the history. I can't imagine too many people are in on it by 1998, but, you know, for those who do know about that tension, it's like, oh, isn't it interesting that Hart would hitch his wagon to Hogan, after all these years later. So Piper is the acting commissioner. He was the guest referee for Savage versus Hart at Slamboree. Things got screwy. Bret ended up winning the match. Piper reversed the decision the following night, so not everyone's mad. Savage is mad at Piper just in general, and he doesn't trust him, but Piper makes this tag team match where he and Savage go against Bret and Hogan, and so the whole storyline is Bret and Hogan are a united front. You know, they are together in their mission. Meanwhile, Piper and Savage, they both hate Hogan, but they also hate each other just as much. And so, you know, why Piper made this match, you know, what he's trying to accomplish with this, I don't know. But he's like, okay, look, you dingbat, if you want a shot at me so bad, then you and I can have a one-on-one match afterward just to get it out of our system and settle our differences. And so then, on top of that, we've got the NWO further meddling in Randy Savage's affairs. By now, Miss Elizabeth has been recruited to join the NWO. Oh no, just like Dusty Rhodes, say it ain't so. And we've added this member to the group. It just feels like they're rehashing everything they did in 96. The whole playbook of, ooh, get Macho psyched out, get him all angry and psychotic by using Elizabeth, you know, as this. But it's just now Elizabeth has turned heel, and it's like it's the same fucking thing. Can they coexist is the name of the game here, but all I want to know is, can all these guys' bodies just exist? Because, you know, you've got Roddy Piper with a fake hip, Randy Savage is on one working knee since April, and then you've got Hollywood Hogan, who no doubt is beat up to his own degree and does not work a maximalist style, let's put it that way. And then you have Bret Hart, who's going to try and hold all this shit together. This match sounds absolutely cursed. And then, after this, we're going to have Piper and Savage wrestle each other. That Boy, I can't wait. Piper and Savage come out separately. Hogan and Hart actually come out together alongside the Disciple, aka Brother Brutai. What a strange looking trio this is. Just weird to see Bret walking with his confident swagger, followed by Hogan doing his big laugh and his belt as guitar strut. What a hilarious dichotomy. Starting out with some back and forth eye pokes by the babyfaces to Hogan, Hollywood doing some great cartoon selling for Piper and Savage, who are just knocking him around. Disciple with a cheap shot to Piper, and now Bret gets his first bit of action. Piper takes a lot of the heat. Savage keeps drawing the referee away, more double teaming by the baddie. Hot tag to Hogan and Savage. The faces are on a roll. Savage goes up top for the elbow, but Hogan throws Piper into the ropes. Savage goes down on his bad knee. Hart puts the sharpshooter on Savage. He submits and the baddies win. I'm going to give it 1 star out of 5. When you have that many people, when the vast majority of the people in your match all need some degree of protection so they look good and they don't look flawed or exposed, you're not going to have a great match as a result of that one. And so I think this match here is very indicative of what the main event scene right now in WCW is. This is a microcosm of that. And it's not all that good. We cannot wait for Goldberg to get here. Please save us, DDP and Karl Malone. So after the match, Mean Gene is in the ring with the losers. Savage still in agony on the mat. Piper doesn't want to talk. He wants to throw the whole thing out, in fact. He tries to pick Randy up. Savage thanks him by laying him out, and the match is now underway. Savage actually does hit the elbow drop, but he hurts his knee on the way down, gives Roddy enough time to kick out. Savage just then pops the referee in the face. Piper hits Savage with a low blow and an eye poke. The figure 4 is applied. In comes new referee Mickey J. Savage gives up again, and Piper wins. Piper looking like he did not want to do it. Well, I didn't want to watch it. I give it 0 stars out of 5. Whose bright idea was it to, first of all, who wants to see Roddy Piper wrestle twice in one night, much less 2 matches back to back at this point? In '98, you say? That's pretty crazy. Savage and Piper were just booked so strangely throughout this entire thing, and it was hard to really know who you were rooting for or against in all this. This is pretty much like the end of this phase of Savage's run in WCW. Right after this, he would take time off to address his knee injuries, and he would come back big as a house and a shell of his former self. Well, you don't want the show to end on a downer like that, do you? No, you want to end on a high note, correct? So with that out of the way, here's the real main event, a one-on-one match for total control of both of the WCW NWO Tag Team Championships as Sting takes on the Giant, or as Michael Buffer referred to him, Giant. So going into Slamboree, Sting and the Giant were both part of Team WCW, fighting the Outsiders, Hall and Nash, for the tag belts. Then, a week before the pay-per-view, the Giant just joins NWO Hollywood as part of the big recruitment drive that both sides are doing here. So then, Sting and Giant fighting for rival agencies here, they beat Hall and Nash for the tag belts after Scott Hall turns on Kevin Nash and joins Hollywood. So then, Giant has possession of both the belts. Sting doesn't want to be his tag team partner anymore, ends up joining the Wolfpac. And also in the middle of this, there was a week where Luger and DDP teamed up. Again, Wolfpac versus WCW. They thought they won the tag titles, but it turns out it wasn't the official combination, so it didn't count. And now they're going to have a match to see who gets to hold both belts, and they get to pick a tag team partner. Ugh, this is all so confusing. The way they have ordered this and layered this. Let's have Giant join the group, the bad group, before he and Sting win the belt, and then they come up with this really cockamamie way for the belt to change hands anyway. It is just such a weird progression. Giant's debuting a cool new part of his gimmick, chain smoking. Yes, he lights up a cigarette, and as Tony Schiavone says, he burns one in the corner. This, I think, is in response to Sting mentioning in a promo the week before how the Giant needs to get in better shape and quit smoking cigarettes. Well, this was his response to that. That'll show him. Also, as Sting is making his entrance, can I just say I'm really glad they got rid of the dog growling noises in the Wolfpac theme.
NWO versus NWO. NWO Hollywood
The Giant blows smoke into Sting's face at the start of the match. Sting responds with a slap. He's off to a hot start, but he gets deflected by the Giant on a couple of occasions. The big man just throwing Sting around like he's nothing. It looks crazy. Sting manages to come back. He even body slams the big man just straight up and down. Scorpion deathlock, but those big old gams are just too strong. No worries, a Scorpion death drop, but he kicks out. I think Sting takes Giant to Dick Kick City mid-chokeslam attempt, and we get another death drop and another kick out. They fight into the corner. Sting gets up and hits a super Scorpion death drop for the win. Sting wins one for the Wolfpac, and he gets to choose who his tag team partner will be the following night. And that's the show. I give it 2 stars out of 5. It is another short-ish match. I would say it's a lot better just in terms of quality and storytelling than the tag match we just saw a few minutes ago. It's a very lackluster main event, final match of the evening, but again, you couldn't have the show end with the tag match into the one-on-one with Piper and Savage, because that would have been super depressing. I think it's a pretty enjoyable 3 hours. Well, let me rephrase that. It's a pretty enjoyable 2 hours, and then a very lackluster final hour. Once again, the big story that really persists throughout this era of WCW is how well the mid-card really pulls their weight and uplifts the overall quality of the show, while the main event, though it has all the star power and certainly a lot more attention and care given into how they tell the stories, they just don't put out the same kind of effort. It's a very, you see Hogan selling around, it's a very different way than like how Booker T sold for, Benoit and Finlay, for instance. WCW still has so much cool factor with the Wolfpac, with the rise of Goldberg. They have that going for them, but it's really just kind of pushing this vehicle along. The vehicle, the insides, the engine, it's all corroded. It's not going to last much longer, but the coolness of what they have around them right now in the present is moving them along. But what did you think of the 98 Gab? And how about this review? Let me know in the comments section below. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it. Subscribe to Wrestling with Regret. Hit the bell icon for all the notifications. Next time here on the Classic Review, we go back to TNA in the year 2006 to cover another patriotic themed show for July in Victory Road 06. But then later in the month still, I'm going to give you guys a real big treat, a classic pay-per-view review from a company that I have never reviewed on this particular series. I have talked about it once on the channel, but never in classic pay-per-view review form. And you just have to wait and see till the end of the month to find out what that is. But until then, folks, I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.